Hello ladies, this is Still Looking Good, the channel that reviews wigs for the mature woman. Today I'm coming to you with part 2 of my machine wig, and in this part I'm going to show you how I sew the wefts together so that I can get ready to sew the hair onto the cap. So in the very beginning I show you a little bit about what I did on the cap. I also show you the different things that I learned as I was putting the wefts together. And then after this video, there'll be another one that comes up later, maybe next week or whatever, that's going to show you the actual sewing of the hair onto the wig cap. So let's get started. Okay, so I pinned the closure to the wig head on the cap. So I tried to make it as much in the middle of this cap as possible. So I pinned it, and then I just drew little gray marks on the sides and in the back so that I could actually draw the line. So that's what I did there. I drew my lines around the sides and around them. It looks like I got a lot of lines on this thing, but what I was trying to do is to make sure that it met up with the closure. On this side it didn't really meet up, so I don't know, I'm gonna have to kind of make the lines go around like that to make it meet up, but on this side they seem to meet up fine. I don't know what happened, but anyway. Yeah, and you're supposed to put straight lines across the top, so that's what I did. So we're gonna see what happens when we sew this up, right? I'm kind of bending down because I really don't feel like readjusting this thing. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna go get some kind of old shirt or something that I can test the stitching on, and that's really important because when I set my stitch length and width, I want to make sure that it's correct. What I'm doing is I'm going to make sure that my tension is correct, upper tension and lower tension, and I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of what it should look like. If it's too loose or if it's too tight, you'll be able to see either a loose bobbin thread or you're going to see a loose upper thread if it's too loose, but both the top and the bottom should be the same. They shouldn't be, one shouldn't be looser than the other, and that way you'll know that your tension is correct. And as I'm showing you in the pictures, you'll see the upper tension and the lower tension, they should both be straight across. They shouldn't be puckered like you see in the pictures, not the top or the bottom. I took an old pair of underwear and started stitching on it, and let me just show you what happened. And this is why it's important to test your stitches for your thread tension, as I mentioned in the first video. But the first stitch that I did is real loose, and unfortunately you're not going to really be able to see it. But it's a real loose stitch, and let me explain what that means. Is this really loose stitch, it's loose at the top and it's loose at the bottom, so there was something wrong with the tension. See how it's puckering? That thread should not be puckering like that. And if you look at the pink thread compared to what you just saw, it's flat. Well, this is a piece of additional thread, but it's flat. It's supposed to be flat. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch this weft together. I measured it so half of the size of this goes around the back of the bottom first part, and then I'm going to put it together and stitch it so that I can bundle it double. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this weft part at the top here, the stitched part, I'm going to put this other stitched part just below like that. I'm not going to stitch them on top of each other like that real thick, because number one, it's not going to get through, your sewing machine needle will probably break, and number two, it'll look bulky. So I'm going to just stitch these under each other. So I'm going to put my needle down in the, well, actually it's trying to go the other way, so I'm going to put it down the middle of the one that it's going into. Then I'm going to hold this hair close together, and then I'm going to do this by hand, just one round by hand to see where the needle's going. I want to see if it's going to go over to that. Okay, so it's going over to this side. So since it's moving over to this side, I'm going to adjust this just a little bit so that I can make sure that the needle comes down in the weft where I want it. And once it's doing that, once I know that it's going to go in the middle of the first one and then into the middle of the second one, I know it's going to stitch correctly. So here we go. And this is kind of a tedious process, but you got to make sure you do this right. So I'm going to stitch these close together, hold these close together all the way to the end. I'm going to hold them close together. And then when I get to the end, I'm just going to do a back stitch. Okay, just for a little bit. Then I'm going to take the needle up, pull this out from under, and you'll see. Look, there it is. Sewn together. And again, you know, mine isn't perfect, but I wanted you to see it in white because I wanted you to see how wide this stitch has to be in order to catch the top of this first one and go all the way through the second one. Okay, it's got to be a 7.0 as the width of the stitch. I mean, yeah, the width of the stitch, and a 1.4 for the length. Okay, so there. I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of these off camera. One thing that I will mention to you ladies is that as you are sewing these wefts together, make sure you go all the way to the end of the tract once you've cut it, because if you don't go to the end of the tract, because you've cut it, once you go to the end of this tract, when you've got them both together, if you don't double stitch and stitch all the way to the end, then some of this hair is going to start coming off. Okay, ladies, that was the process of sewing the wefts together. As you saw, there are a few lessons that I learned, specifically about making sure that you manually turn the rotating handle on the outside. I don't know what you call it, but whatever that is that manually turns the needle and makes it go in and out. You want to make sure that you do that each time you're starting to sew the wefts, because you never know where that zigzag stopped, whether it stopped on the left or stopped on the right when you finish sewing one set of wefts. So you always want to make sure that you pull that needle down into the area where you want it and see where it's going to go. Is it going to go left or go right? Whichever direction it goes, you want to make the adjustment so that when it starts to go zigzagging, it's going in the right direction. I hope that makes sense, but yeah, you want to make sure that you do that. And you also may have the problem of the feeder underneath the presser foot, the thing that goes like this to move the material along when you're sewing clothing. That can sometimes get stuck. And with hair, it's going to be even more difficult sometimes. So if you find that as you get started, the thread's just going back and forth instead of an actual zigzag, that means it's getting stuck under that feeder. So you want to kind of gently push it through so that it starts to zigzag correctly, because if you continue to let it do like that, there's going to be a lot of thread underneath that bob and it's going to get stuck and you're going to have to cut all of that off. So those are two of the things that I learned and wanted to share with you guys, because sewing these wefts is definitely a process. And you want to make sure also that the width is wide enough, and I think I talked about that too. So I just wanted to come to you guys and share this with you. I hope it was helpful, because it's definitely been helpful to me to do this process. And so the next video that I'm going to show you is sewing the actual wefts onto the cap. That part was a lot more involved than I had expected as well, and I'm going to explain that to you in the next video. So again, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you have not already done so, and those of you who have subscribed since this last video, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Please tell your mother and your sister and your auntie and your grandma and everyone who's older, who's looking for assistance with mature wigs and mature women who are wearing wigs. That's what my channel is all about. So again, as I always say, if you're going to show love to anyone today, please show it to the Creator. I'm still looking good, and of course, so are you. See you next time.